There we go. Now it's recording, so you'll probably all get something to click on.
Angela should also be joining us any second, so if you could just keep an eye in the waiting room.
Great. Okay, good. So if anybody sees someone come in, you know what happens when you're presenting, you start talking and you're so busy listening to yourself to make sure you don't say anything wrong. You don't necessarily notice anybody else coming in.
If you'd like, you can make one of us a co-host and then we could see it and let her in.
Let's see if I can do that. How do I make a co-host?
Participants, hit participant.
Participants
And then
who wants
the
to be?
name.
Oh,
I don't
there's
mind.
Angela. There's Angela right now. So
Oh,
Angela's
okay, so you
in.
don't need it.
So we might be good unless we get another phone call or another message from Pete. So,
I'll keep you posted. I think she
Okay.
was the last one.
excellent. Okay. All right. So arts and culture might be an area, and that's a great area. Please don't forget arts and culture. You know, very, very important thing. Some of us are dying to know more about ourselves that we don't know about. I think that's an important piece for you to know. My church has a multicultural emphasis, and we have probably more cultures in my church than most of the churches in our denomination. And it's fantastic. And we were celebrating. They even put us in the national magazine for that. And I kind of sat there feeling kind of empty because I can't really say. Maybe I'm Jamaican. Maybe I'm African. You know, maybe I'm a mutt. I'm okay with that, but it would be nice to know where I'm a mutt from, you know, kind of thing. So those are important pieces. So think about what that may do to a young person when somebody says, come in for this cultural day, and this kid doesn't know where he's from or doesn't know anything about his history. Important pieces. Social justice, what is that, everyone? I'm going to take a gander at social justice. So when we talk about social justice, we could be talking about equity in the justice system. We could be talking about enslavement. We could be talking about all kinds of things. We could be talking about criminal history. We could talk about all those kinds of things. So social justice. I know one organization that applied in this category of social justice in order to help people wipe away previous negative history, and they won. They won the grant. They were able to help a number of people with a history of criminal history be able to move forward in their life. So that's another good area to really give some thought to. Conservation in the environment. How many of you recycle? Good. So you're beginning to think more and more about that. I grew up in the generation where they didn't think about that for a long time. So still sometimes I have to think consciously about conservation and environment. Those are great things for us to get into. Maybe even considering so this conservation and the environment, a gardening program. Great kind of thing. So just some thoughts. Technical assistance. What do you think they mean by technical assistance?
Computer support.
Perhaps, of course, that can also, if you talk about computer support, that could go above too in the promising futures. Technical assistance.
Mm-hmm.
How to navigate the systems that already exist out there. So it could potentially be computer systems, or how about, have any of you ever gone online and tried to figure out all of the stuff, you know, okay, if you were just affected by the hurricane and you click on this and it says, go in here, provide this information, do all of this stuff, do this. Technical assistance. Sometimes people need a walkthrough. Have you helped your mother or your grandmother or an uncle or an aunt learn how to navigate systems? Most of us have. So you could have a program that does that, you know, where you've got a whole bunch of senior citizens who never so much as touched the computer, and you may need to help them navigate. Here's how you do it. So it can be basic assistance, or it can get a little deeper in that maybe it's not necessarily how to turn on the computer. It might be how to navigate on the computer. So there's a number of different things with technical assistance. Technical assistance can also relate to learning how to use forms and things that may not be available. So there might be a form or something, for example, a housing application. other kinds of things. And although a lot of things are available online, some people still get the old paper application to something. You don't know how to do it, and you might want to have a class where you can bring people together. Today, everyone, we are going to fill out this housing application form so that way you can know that you're going to get Section 8 later on. So those kinds of things, although I wouldn't put a whole lot into Section 8 because it takes forever for people who have applied for that. So those are some of the things that are there. Oh, let's move down to healthy lives. Health disparities. What do we mean by disparity when we talk about healthy lives? What do you mean by disparity?
Ensuring like young people have access to more than just fast food, understanding nutrition and things like that, like programs that do that type of work.
Fantastic. That's a piece of that. Yeah.
Um,
Go ahead, Anna.
I was just gonna say, like some people don't have access to insurance for whatever reason and things like that, disparities that way as well.
Yeah. Have you ever, anybody ever seen the equity picture where you have 3 steps and there are 3 different levels? You have the short person standing on the shortest one, still can't see over the fence. The middle person can barely see over the fence. The other person can see way over the fence. Equity is not necessarily giving everybody the same thing. It's giving people what they need to survive. So equity may mean one person gets a little more than someone else. So you don't just give you can give everybody $1,000 rent, but if my rent's $1,500, there's a disparity there, right? Now that we're talking about health disparity, so it may or may not relate to this area. You have to give a justification for that. But also in certain communities, people do not always receive the same kind of coverage. The coverage that's available in downtown Yonkers may not be the same coverage that's available in Connecticut. And so those are disparities of when people cannot get the same access to healthcare, the same access to, and since this is dealing with health, it really relates mostly to healthcare. So dealing with those disparities. So you may be a systems person and you want to fight the system, and so you could put in a proposal right here. Or you may be a person who just wants to create something new that would give people that equality or that equity, as the case might be. So you can do all those kinds of things. So healthcare systems, health disparities, it's trying to even the playing field so everybody gets the same or the same access, not necessarily the same thing, but the same access. For example, an example that would be someone can receive DSS, and let's say I'm only creating $1,000 a month for me to take care of myself, but then my friend has 2 kids and they only get $1,000 a month to survive. Is that equity? It wouldn't be, because now they have more expense. They have more expense, and they need more money in order to survive. So equity is making the playing field even. And I shouldn't be too upset because I can meet my need, but can my neighbor meet their expense? That's creating equity. So those kinds of things. Now there are occasionally in our system something called special projects. Sometimes something hits that doesn't hit any of those fields. I didn't write down any examples particularly, but a special project might be a disaster, for example. So we've just dealt with here in the New York area, right? We've dealt with the hurricanes, right, or that kind of thing. Or suppose there was maybe it's the COVID variants. Now that none of these necessarily talk about COVID. So they may be uncomfortable areas. So we might come up with a real plan that I can resolve COVID with this, and that'd be a wonderful thing. You probably get millions of dollars if you can, but they have this category called special projects. And one of the best ways of really getting a special project, they might put something out there, what's called an RFP, which stands for request for proposal. And they might say, here's some special projects that you could think about. Or the RFP, or it might say, call the program officer. Now, what's a program officer? It's the person for the foundation that represents that area. So in the case of the Westchester Community Foundation, there's someone who handles Promising Futures. There's someone who handles Thriving Communities. There's someone who handles Healthy Lives. So after I've read everything that I can possibly read about this, I still have questions. What would be the next best thing to do?
Call that person for that area.
Call them, build a relationship. Or if I know I'm coming out of left field and it's something that you have questions whether or not it should be approved, one of the great things is to include the program person in a newsletter, other things you might already be doing. so that by the time you actually put in a request, you've already won hook, line, and sinker. So just some of those kinds of things. Actually, without looking at the third one, these are two good ones. Let's begin the process of writing a proposal. Which one do you want to handle? Do you want to do the SNY, which is much smaller? Or do you want to do the Westchester Community Foundation, which is much larger?
The larger one.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same.
You want
Yeah.
to go for the larger one? Okay. I know there are other people on that may or may not be able to tune in or not. But that's okay. Here's your homework assignment. So I'm not even going to keep you much longer because we've got to figure out that. Do you all know each other? I don't know if you know other people on this phone call. What I'd like to do is connect us up in groups of 2. And so you know what? I'm gonna put that on Pete. Pete, you get some homework assignment. I want you to match everybody up in groups of 2. And your job then, once Pete has matched you up with someone, hopefully similar things, I want you to come up with a grant plan. And let me suggest this. If you want to support a particular issue, ask Pete. Pete not only has PS Charities, but he's also connected to Rotary. He's also connected to Kiwanis. He's also connected to the YMCA. He has connections with several other organizations. Talk to him. Pick an actual need and follow through with the Westchester Community Foundation and see what you can come up with in this case, I'm going to give you 2 weeks because it can take a little time to do a little bit of research. Not only do you have to read through everything, but you may have to do a little bit of research based on what they have. Do it in conjunction with a real project. So if you don't have all the answers, Pete's going to be a referral person. All right, Pete, you got that? So you're going to refer everyone to a particular project.
I just shared our EIN with you via text, but I could also put it in the chat if anybody needs it as well.
Okay. And if Pete doesn't give you anything of interest, which hardly could ever be true because Pete's always got something going on, right? You can pick a specific project, but wait till you're matched up. Find an organization that receives that because none of us individually is a 501c3. So the key would be to connect with someone who's going to meet all the generally meet all the eligibility requirements. So you're not doing homework for nothing. I always hated it when they gave you an assignment that never was going to go anywhere. I like assignments that can go somewhere. So what I want you to do is to pick an actual project, and again, PS Charities, Kiwanis, Rotary, YMCA, or anything else that Pete you might want to suggest. Connect with a larger organization, come up with a plan, and begin to develop a proposal. So your homework assignment. So of the 3 links right now, the priority link has just become Westchester Community Foundation. So that was the middle link that I gave you. And I want you to take that and I want you to play over the next 2 weeks and write yourself a grant. Well, it's not for you, but for that organization. And let's see what we can come up with. And now it doesn't have to be submitted when it's done. English doesn't have to be perfect. None of those kinds of things. But we're going to walk through it, fix it, tone it up, and maybe we have something that we can actually send through. My suggestion would be is if you're going to pick something that's sort of arbitrary, maybe Pete makes suggestions of 4 or 5 organizations and you don't like any of them. I should say the organization, but maybe you don't like any of these suggestions that may be made. So you want to pick something and you want to do something for the Cancer Society. In order that your work be valuable, you want to make sure you have a contact person with that organization so they can tell you if you're thinking along the lines, because they may already have an answer to that, may receive funding from the Westchester Community Foundation in that area. We don't want to do that. But I want to suggest that if you're doing something that's positive for the community, that you connect with an organization, Effie's coming in now. If you want to do something that is powerful for the organization, that would be a way of going about it. Does that make sense, Pete? Have we approached that properly?
Absolutely. There is one other, if you have a few.
I'm sorry, your voice is skipping a little bit, Pete.
I have a friend, Latoya, that works with Chase Bank that I would like to, she's not on today, but I would just like for us to take a quick look at that before we finalize the call, if you have a little bit more time.
For Chase Bank. You said Chase?
Yes, that was the third one that.
That was the
went
third
out.
link? Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, Chase Bank, we had,
Yes, so I'm
it should be in the
clicking in,
email,
so
it was the
so
last one.
you should be able to see it. Chase Bank, so the first thing you catch is
Yep, it just
already,
popped
TP
up.
Mortgages is already they do an online banking application. And so normally we read this, I read this afternoon, I was reading through this one because this is a new one that Pete gave me. View application guidelines, so we're gonna click here. And you can see there are quite a few guidelines, but we'll skip down just a little bit. So there's an information page as well, but let's skip down just a little bit. So you have to have an idea of the mission. The mission of the organization could be different than the mission of the project that you're doing. So when they ask for mission, guess which one you're going to use?
Your project's mission?
Actually, you use the mission of the organization, because if I said YMCA, you're already going to have a thought in your head as to what the YMCA is about. If I say Red Cross, you're already going to have a thought. So start with that mission and then drill down later. So ask for the mission. It asks for the recent achievements. So you're going to look at some of the highlights of that organization that you're going to play with. Program focus and population served. So now we're beginning to drill down a little deeper. So this one gets a little deeper, be able to talk about what can be done. By the way, if your mission is different than the mission of the organization, what do you do?
Modify it.
Can you modify the mission of the organization?
Possibly.
Possibly, but most likely not. Most have something that's set in stone. Their grandmother did it, their mother did it, and now you don't dare change. So that might be the possibility. But you can say the mission of the YMCA of Yonkers is to assist all people in achieving healthy outcomes. So I'm hitting the national mission for all. However, this program will be blah, 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 and will focus on these areas. So that is the way of really answering the mission question. If your mission is slightly different, find a way to show that you're connected to the mother mission with the mission that you created. Does that make sense? Now, what I would do is, in order to fix the thinking, the mission of the organization is whatever the national or whatever the mission is. The objective of the organization is, or of the program that you're doing is what you're doing. So that way you have both the mission and the objectives taken care of. So it talks about the program focus and population. So it does drill down to that a little bit. Program project description. What would they mean by program or project description?
What you're working on, what you'll be doing.
Exactly that. Exactly what you're doing. Okay. Which could be very different again than anything that the organization has ever done before. So program and focus and population served. So you might want to talk a little about the population served. Where can we get some population statistics? Somebody said that last time we were online together. IRS. You might be able to get some finance information. Sorry, not IRS, not what I meant to say. I meant to say, oh goodness.
Census?
The census is what I meant to say. Sorry about that. Thank you. I was just looking at something that had the IRS on it, so that's why I'm stuck there. The census provides a lot of data, and on the census website, they list other places that provide data. If you're from the city of Yonkers, I would suggest that you look at the city plan, and you can go to YonkersNewYork.gov, and you can see the city plan and where the city's serving. If Yonkers says that this area is of high need, is that a brownie point for you if that's the area that you're serving in? It sure is. So it's a good possibility. Okay. And when it says project description, please remember that may mean dates, times, other kinds of information. And I always tell people to now pretend you were a client of that project, walk through it. Walk through the project like a brand new client and answer all the questions that a brand new client would want to answer. That's a good way to approach that. The project budget. So the project budget would again consist of all the expenses. Can you put things that are not project oriented in here?
Yeah.
You might get an example of something?
Well, I'm thinking more so like, I mean, related in the sense like, I mean, maybe not directly related, but it's helping for the project. So like if a payroll is needed, or, you know, like certain administrative things are needed.
So admin can fit here. See, so that's
Okay.
a good point. A grant might say we're not giving you any administrative money. This one leaves some room because it says program or project budget, and it doesn't have anything to say administration not included. So for example, if Pete is the administrator, we know that Pete has to spend some time advertising and pumping this publicly, so people are going to buy into it so that we can find other resources to be able to help make that happen. So maybe we want to include 10% of his income there. Or if he doesn't have an income, which is probably the case because Pete's such a charitable man, right? You can begin to develop a salary by putting maybe 10% of what he deserves on here. It's just a thought. You know, I'm not picking on Pete particularly, but that's, if you ever wondered how organizations like the YMCA cover the expense for the CEO, the CFO, the marketing person, blah, 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 blah. We try to put on almost every grant and every fundraising, you know, 10% overhead, boom. And then we take that, we continue to line it up. We try to cover all the expenses through that. So that's how it's done, by including it in the project budget. By the way, I think we talked about this. How much should you put on administration in the budget?
Didn't you say 10 to 15%?
10 to 15%. That is correct. Okay. I wouldn't go much more than that. If you go much more than that, then it's going to be a bit of a tough. Now that's different. Administrative expense is very different than program expense. So if I'm hiring a psychotherapist who gets $80 an hour, is that an admin or is it program?
Program.
It's program. So that won't matter. And the administrator who's making $10 an hour, you know, that can still be there as well, but they're two different categories. So you have to separate program expense from admin expense, so you can understand the difference between the two. So those are important pieces to consider as a part of it. By the way, do not forget when you're putting together program expenses, benefits, taxes, all of those kinds of things. So some agencies, for example, have a benefits package number. We have one, for example. So 26% of anyone's salary is considered the fringe and administrative costs. So that includes retirement, it includes medical, it includes taxes that are paid, it includes all those things. What you all may not know is that for every dollar, if you're an employer and you're paying 7.65%, or your employee is paying 7.65% of their salary to the government, you have to match the 7.65%. So you're actually worth more to your company than just the $25,000 a year they give you. You're paying taxes, and guess what? The company's also matching those taxes for you as an employee. So there are other expenses. So there might be an amount. So ours is 26%. Which is still, we're really in the 30s, but we put on every public document 26% because we can show the proof for 26% easily. The rest of it might be a little harder to prove. So again, that includes medical coverage, or you might have a really high medical plan. Medical plans can be really, really expensive. So that's why oftentimes in our jobs, they toss part of it back to us that you have to pay part of your medical expense while we pay a part of it. As the case might be, if you're on a grant and you could get that whole thing in there, you can do that. So there are great opportunities that are there. Geography to be served. So the area that you plan to serve. So they want the boundaries, all of those kinds of things. And then it goes on to ask a few other things. And certainly, especially if you were not just your contact information, but especially if you were already funded, a description of how the grant funds were used if they used this grant before. So if they never used it before, nothing to worry about. But it does give that kind of an opportunity. Then it asks for some other things that come from the organization. The budget and principal funding source levels, the most recent audited financial statement, a list of board members and their affiliations. So that means not just the name of the board members, but who are they connected with? So, yes.
One of those things. So in New York State, for like smaller organizations that are not making 250,000, 750,000, they're not required to get their financial statements audited. So if a smaller organization wants to apply for a grant like this, how do they move forward? That's something that I always battle with because I don't have audited financial statements.
Well, in this case, you would submit what you have. And probably get them maybe get a notarized kind of thing that you're saying these are our fiscal statements. Boom, get it notarized and send that. I would look for something as close to, you may not be required to be audited, but you also want to send a note saying that since we're not required to be audited, but this is what we have done to certify these statements. Or you still might have an accountant who's on your board who might be able to sign off and say these are our financial statements. But something that shows that there's an attempt to give accuracy in your recording. Does that make sense?
It does.
I know that I have submitted. Sometimes they want an audited financial statement, and we're a much larger organization. Sometimes the audit doesn't get done by the time the application is due. So I have sent financial statements and just said, I will send the audited financial statement when it's ready. And I've never had it turned back. So there are things like that. So just as you know, the bigger you get, the more that is required of you. And there's so many different kinds of audits as well. So there's the audit you do from $250,000 to $750,000 of federal income. And if you make over $750,000 federal income, you have to have an A133 audit, which is just asks every question. You got to know who everybody's grandmother was. It asks so many technical questions. So all of those kinds of things. But this goes on, and I don't have a lot more time, so I'm going to open up a gym for the Salvation Army. So I'm headed out in a few months. But you can see there's a whole lot of different things. And actually, let me change what I said the homework was a little while ago. I said everybody could apply for the Westchester Community Foundation. Let's divide it. So each of you give Pete a call or give an organization a call, come up with a plan. Or the only thing I'm going to ask from Pete is that he matches us up in teams so that two people are working together. Okay, so somebody can do the play ball application, somebody can do the Westchester Community Foundation application, and somebody can do the JP Morgan Chase Foundation. Play with it and come up with an idea, come up with some things, and see what you're able to accomplish. Does that make sense, Pete?
Yes, absolutely. And thank you all for joining. Thank you, Effie. I know you caught the end of it, but we recorded it, and I'll definitely fill you in. If anybody has any questions, they could give me a call or a text after this meeting. And John, I'll speak with you, I guess, a little later after you're done with the Salvation Army.
Okay, just as a quick note, or actually you can give me a call. I just have to go open the door and just wait till the administrators get there.
No problem.
If you have any questions about anything, please feel free to call. And everyone, we're going to go back to our Friday schedule. So I won't be bothering you on Mondays. It's the worst day to ask you to do extra work, right? So we're going to go back
this
to
Friday. We have your celebration dinner, so we're not going to do this Friday.
Right. Thank you very, very much. So we're not going to do this Friday. Thank you, Pete. I appreciate that.
No problem. Maybe we could squeeze in.
Maybe we will do next Monday, and then we'll figure it out from there. Okay. Lots to think about, but we'll get in touch with everyone, and I'm going to try to get a little better at getting your notes earlier so that you can plan around it. Okay. Any immediate questions? Any immediate questions? Anything we need to answer? All right, folks. No. Have a great evening.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.